CBS 46 investigative reporter Rachel Polansky uncovered that stranger is a repeat offender.
DeMarcus Brinkley has a lengthy rap sheet including child molestation and attempted rape. Rachel reveals why the family is now pushing for legislation.
From judges in the courtroom to counselors in the mental health system, DeMarcus Brinkley encountered many state officials throughout his life. Had any of them handled his prior cases differently? Miriam's family believes she might still be alive today. That's why they created this document. It contains a number of initiatives. They're calling it Miriam's Law, and they're looking for a state lawmaker to sponsor it. Miriam Abdelrab was always creating.
She loved drawing. She was an amazing artist.
Today, those sketches and this community mural memorializing her life is all her baby brother Ollie has left.
She probably didn't know it while she was here, but I definitely looked up to her.
After her late-night bartending shift, Miriam stopped at a gas station. Police told Miriam's family it appeared she was spotted there randomly and followed. Then, surveillance video captures the moments she gets to her boyfriend's house. Seconds later, another car pulls up. That's when a man approaches Miriam and forces her into his car, all while Miriam's boyfriend watches helplessly.
Oh my God, bro, I just watched her get kidnapped from in front of my house.
She had a gun pointed to her?
Yes, I watched it all through my window in my front yard. He had a gun to her, and he forced her into a car.
4 hours after that panicked 911 call, Miriam was found dead with multiple gunshot wounds. In the weeks that followed, her family was overcome with grief. Then as more details came out, the trauma intensified.
I kind of broke down. I fell down to my knees. What happened to my sister was preventable.
CBS 46 Investigates dug into DeMarcus Brinkley's history and uncovered a schizophrenia diagnosis and a record of violent crimes. According to Fulton County Court documents, Brinkley was accused of raping a 7-year-old girl in 2012. Then in 2013, he was found on top of a naked 6-year-old girl. In 2015, he pled guilty to child molestation, attempted rape, and cruelty to children. The state recommended he serve 15 years in prison, followed by 15 years on probation. Instead, Brinkley was sentenced to 15 years total, 7 in prison, followed by 8 on probation. He'd also have to register as a sex offender. But when Brinkley was released in 2020, that's when we found that he never received a risk level assessment. That's when offenders are designated Tier 1, 2, or 3, depending on their risk level for sexual reoffense.
If you go on the sex offender registry website, it says not leveled on his name still.
He's right. We took these findings to the executive director of the Georgia Sex Offender Registration Review Board, who blamed a backlog for offenders not getting leveled, which he says is, quote, due to understaffing and a lack of funds. Unlike some states where sex offenders are leveled on the day of their sentencing, Georgia levels sex offenders when they are released from prison.
To this day, our communities are at risk.
And that's where the family says Miriam's Law comes into the picture. By 1, requiring sex offenders who have not received a risk level assessment to be fitted with an ankle monitor. Once they are leveled, Tier 3 offenders would be required to wear the monitor for the duration of their sentence, while Tier 1 and Tier 2 offenders could have them removed. And 2, requiring sex offenders to carry an ID card with a specific symbol that is recognizable to law enforcement.
There might be more DeMarcus Brinkleys out there, and we don't want this to happen to anybody else.
Should Miriam's Law move forward, it's likely that it will face some legal challenges. In 2019, the Georgia Supreme Court struck down a law that required lifetime ankle monitoring of high-risk sex offenders. And as far as ID cards, which disclose sex offender status, critics in other states have called them a modern-day scarlet letter. Still, CBS 46 Investigates found at least 8 states that have such cards.
I'm going to vote for victims.
The family has also received support from State Representative Misha Maynor and Atlanta Councilwoman Keisha Waits.
I am very sensitive to an individual's privacy. I understand that. However, when it comes to a level 3 and only a level 3 offender, I think the dynamics are different. I think it's about the greater public good. And I think in this particular case, I think had we had something like that in place, we could have tracked this individual, we could have monitored him, and perhaps saved her life.
A legislative lifeline that could provide protection for years to come.
It will be a part of her legacy.
A legacy.
Murals are nice, but
the family hopes
I think if less tragedies happen,
will go beyond the many scribed sentiments and into Georgia state law.
That'd be the goal.
DeMarcus Brinkley was indicted on 9 felony counts for the death of Miriam Abdelrab, including murder, kidnapping, and attempted rape. His trial is scheduled for early October. As for Miriam's Law, Well, it still needs a sponsor in the General Assembly. Then it needs to be pre-filed before session begins in January. Of course, I will be watching this closely. Rachel Polansky, CBS 46 News.
Atlanta City Councilwoman accused of abusing her power.
Tonight, CBS 46 investigating claims that she used her position for her own personal benefit. This happened in Peachtree City. Public records reveal Congresswoman Gretchen Koala and her husband Joe asked city workers to add speed bumps near their home and tried to have a popular public path removed.
And one day after CBS 46 investigative reporter Rachel Polansky made a trip to Peachtree City, changes had begun.
In Peachtree City, cars are optional, as the majority of the community gets around on these, using the city's path system, especially those that live around Peachtree Lake, like Joanne Boland.
The pathway system in Peachtree City is what it's all about. I mean, that's why people move here. It's what's on our website. That's why we waited for 2 years to find a house in this subdivision.
This is the public path Boland walks every day that leads to the larger path around the lake. And this is Councilwoman Gretchen Koala's home.
The path's been here for 42 years. They moved in a few years ago.
That's why Boland was angry that Councilwoman Koala and her husband Joe wanted to get rid of the path. According to public records obtained by CBS 46 Investigates, Joe sent this email to the city attorney in early July, complaining about the way people were using the public path next to his home involving boats, cars, and construction vehicles, even sharing his plans to ask the city to have it removed. He goes on to say, quote, "Property rights issues can get very sticky, and I have been trying to present this without too much being made public," end quote.
Oh, yeah.
But the public did find out, and they were not pleased with him or his wife, who they felt was trying to abuse her power.
We pay tax dollars to support these paths, and so when someone tries to steal things from me and my neighbors, I definitely get very defensive of that.
Transparency from our elected officials is really key and important, and to have someone in for such short amount of time to already be bending rules and utilizing them for her own benefit is sad.
Signs with the words "Save Our Paths" quickly began sprouting throughout the neighborhood. And 10 days later, the Peachtree City mayor sent this letter to residents, saying the path in question would, quote, "continue to be a part of the city's path system." She also addressed these concerns at a recent council meeting.
It's over. The abandonment will not happen.
But the problems did not end there. CBS 46 Investigates also got a hold of this text message exchange between Councilwoman Koala and a city worker, in which she asks about location preference for speed bumps behind and beside her home to slow traffic. A month later, once those speed bumps are installed, all on the taxpayer's dime, she texts again, this time with a picture and another ask. Do we have to leave such a large gap? Can there be no gap? This doesn't slow bikers or skateboarding.
It just feels like it was done for Councilmember Gretchen's benefit.
It has me questioning her ethics.
This neighbor, who says she voted for Councilwoman Koala, even made some changes to an old campaign yard sign.
Recall Gretchen, corruption in Peachtree City Council.
Now she and other neighbors are calling for Councilwoman Koala to step down. I asked the councilwoman about that after she approached us as we were flying our drone above the public path near her home.
But a lot of your neighbors want to hear if you're going to resign, if you're going to step down. That's kind of it.
Meanwhile, one day after our initial visit, another note was sent to residents, this time from the city manager, stating that after careful review and consideration, 18 of the 26 newly added speed bumps would be removed. I also tried to ask the councilwoman about that.
I'd love to hear your side of the story.
She didn't want to talk with me, but she did publish this editorial last month, saying she would abstain from any planning or decisions related to the path in question. Amid the calls to resign, Councilwoman Koala's house has since been listed for sale and is now under contract. Rachel Polansky, CBS 46 News. Have you ever had mail stolen or checks washed? What about if you send or receive mail? Well, then this story impacts you. This woman dropped off 2 checks inside a blue bin right outside a Gwinnett County post office. This is a picture of the check in question. It was written out for $73. cashed for $2,000. Both checks were stolen and washed. So what is check washing? Essentially, the thief steals the check, then he changes the name and the amount and cashes it. I uncovered multiple reports just like this, so I took my findings to the Greater Atlanta Postmaster, pictured here. She didn't want to talk with me.
Do you have a couple of minutes? I have no comments about that.
So I went to U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock, who not only talked with me, but also wrote this letter to the Chief Postal Inspector and asked him to investigate my findings. I'll keep you updated on what happens next.
CBS 46 investigative reporter Rachel Polansky went to the Postal Inspection Service looking for answers, but what she found was little explanation from those in charge.
There's nothing like the bond between a mother and her daughter, filled with laughter, smiles, and worries.
My mom had surgery back in November. My mom is visiting.
While Eunice was attending rehab at Northside Duluth, Angie Eze was helping her mom with mundane chores, like paying her bills.
I was like, well, I'm passing right by the post office. I'll just stop and drop it off so I don't have to worry about forgetting it tomorrow. Well, that ended up being a big mistake.
She dropped 2 checks inside this blue box right outside the Duluth post office, and both were altered. The names and the amounts changed. A $73 check rewritten to $2,000, and a $24 check changed to $1,165. Both were cashed.
It was really shocking because it felt really bold to me, and my mom's on a fixed income, so that's a significant hit.
It's called check washing, and it happens when thieves swipe checks, erase details, usually with cleaning products, and rewrite them. Angie filed a report with Duluth PD where she was one of a dozen people who made mail-related reports there over the last 3 months.
Oh, they didn't receive it yet?
So did Pamela Campori, whose passport and visa were stolen from this envelope, which she sent priority and dropped off inside the Duluth post office, trying to renew her travel documents.
I pay for express. It was the express mail with assurance, everything.
5 days later, she got an email from the Cyprus embassy in D.C. telling her they got an empty, ripped envelope and told her to contact the post office and the police.
That is the last time I'm not gonna send nothing via post office.
And problems have been plaguing this Duluth post office for quite some time. In fact, in 2020, a former postal worker pled guilty to stealing gift cards and cash addressed to Duluth residents. CBS 46 Investigates took all of our findings to Duluth police. And that's when we learned they're frustrated too.
We're then posed into a weird position between jurisdiction. The Duluth Police Department doesn't have any jurisdiction to investigate a possible crime on the post office property.
He's right. The Postal Inspection Service, or USPIS, is the agency that handles crimes that involve the mail. A spokesperson there told me, quote, in order to maintain the integrity of those investigations, postal inspectors cannot provide additional details. CBS 46 Investigates was able to, but a previous CBS 46 investigation uncovered that these types of complaints are rarely investigated. So I asked multiple times for an interview with Duluth Postmaster Charlie Nishis or the Greater Atlanta Postmaster Philonda Woods. After I was repeatedly denied or ignored, I stopped by the Duluth post office looking for answers.
Residents have been complaining about check washing, missing mail, stolen mail.
Nishis wasn't there either time I visited.
Does he ever come to work?
He's got multiple offices, so it's hard to catch him.
So I tried Greater Atlanta Postmaster Philonda Woods over at headquarters.
Rachel Polansky, CBS 46 News. I've been trying to get in touch with you for quite some time to talk about the problems at the Duluth post office. Do you have a couple of minutes?
I have no comments about that.
She would not answer my questions.
Taxpayers support the Postal Service.
Yes, ma'am.
Your agency works under the federal government.
Again, I don't have any responses for that.
Only telling me to call the press office.
But we've asked several times for an in-person interview with you, and they've ignored us.
Well, and I can't give you an interview now.
Her answers, or lack thereof, offered little comfort to Angie and Pamela, who are still frustrated and waiting for answers.
As of now, we haven't heard anything.
Post office don't tell me nothing. I don't know what to do now.
All right, now if you've experienced mail theft, you're going to want to make sure you report it to the Postal Inspection Service, and we have information on exactly how you can do that on our website, cbs46.com. Now, as far as prevention and what you can do right now, Officer Sadowski suggests paying your bills online or using a Cash App, though it's something we know is not feasible for everyone. Reporting in Duluth, Rachel Polansky, CBS 46 News. For years, we've witnessed the increasingly deadly encounters inherent with traffic stops.
I'm scared. I'm just scared.
No longer routine, stops have led to hundreds of deaths nationwide, shattering lives on both sides. So why are Atlanta's police officers being incentivized to pull over more drivers?
At the top left, you'll see where it says target goals are based on an average of 8 credits accumulated per day worked, meaning that I have to have 8 points a day.
This former Atlanta police officer, who would only talk with us if we hid their identity, says officers are awarded credits or points based on their actions each shift. Writing a traffic ticket, for example, gets APD officers 1.5 points, while a felony or juvenile arrest is worth 5 points. Meanwhile, calls for service, which include 911 calls, are only worth 1/4 point. Does this system encourage officers to do police work that earns them more points?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes, because I might decide to sit somewhere in the cut and wait for somebody to glide through stop signs, especially a stop sign that I know people are definitely going to miss. I'll sit there and wait for that for my points. I'm not going to lie, if I think the person has the finances to pay for it, I will stack those tickets.
To some, the policy amounts to a reward system, targeting the public as trophies.
I am really critical of volume traffic stops.
I don't like it. I think it's ridiculous.
But Deputy Chief Darren Sherbaum defends APD's evaluation system as a way to measure officer productivity.
The values that are assigned are to reflect the time of service that it takes for that officer to meet the task.
He says points are based on effort and work. Traffic stops are fairly quick, so they're worth less points than juvenile arrests, which take up more time.
So when you see that, that is a fair reflection of how much time is an officer out of service for those functions.
APD insists that officers are not penalized based on their point totals.
That's why they consider a performance sheet, because we have to go by this in order to keep our jobs pretty much.
But this former officer, as well as 2 current officers who did not want to be identified, fearing retaliation, reiterated that officers are often placed in undesirable zones or assigned undesirable shifts if they don't score enough points. And just last month, a Zone 4 major sent this email to his officers, praising the evening watch for, quote, going from 85 stops in week 1 to 180 stops in week 2, and shaming the morning watch, who, quote, finished last with a disappointing 112 stops. Our investigation also found officers who met their target goals received comments like highly satisfactory, while those who did not received remarks like unacceptable. And point totals are not hidden in personnel files. The officers we spoke with say they're posted in precincts like scorecards.
Why would you post this for all officers to see if officers weren't being penalized?
So I cannot speak to the posting in police facilities. We have a number of police facilities. I wouldn't say it's accurate to say it's posted at every one, but I can't speak to what may be occurring there. Our goal is to know when that patrol car leaves the precinct that day, is it serving your community?
And this is not the first time APD's point system has been called into question. In 2020, former Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms created a Use of Force Advisory Council and tasked them with issuing recommendations to improve policing in the city. Among those recommendations, eliminating performance evaluation systems and disciplinary actions that incentivize officers to make unnecessary arrests.
Is it some arbitrary system?
Tiffany Roberts served as co-chair on that council.
It's pretty clear that if you say that officers have to have 8 points a day in order to have a satisfactory mark and you punish them if they don't, you're telling them they have to arrest people so that they're not incentivized to divert cases.
APD went on to tell me that they've recently created another performance evaluation chart that does award points to officers who use policing alternatives. But officers we spoke with say they've yet to see that updated chart in their precincts. Regardless, it's something they call putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound.
No officer should be punished for not meeting this 8-point average goal a day. No officer should be punished for that.
So CBS 46 Investigates wanted to know, are performance evaluation systems the norm in policing? Well, we reached out to police departments across the country, and none of these agencies reported having similar programs in place. To take a closer look at our investigation, you can head to CBS46.com. Rachel Polansky, CBS 46 News.